Ladies and gentlemen, what's happening? Popping in here, Gordie Tamayo. We are going to jump into some heated topics. Man, it's a Tuesday right now, and the world is on fire, so to speak, in more ways than one. But hot off the press, we got so much that's taking place, especially with the fallout over at the White House. Oval Office was a little bit chaotic with Trump, Zelenskyy, Vance, and you know, a lot of things have been going across back and forth over the internet as a result of this particular disaster that seemed to go about. And so people are polarized on, who is right, who is wrong. Nonetheless, what we're going to get into today is what you can learn as a business owner from this fallout. How can negotiating with no leverage impact you, which is really what sticks out to me. And so I want to get into that in just a second here. But let's paint a picture for you here. I want to walk it back just a little bit in case you're new to the news about this. And let's say you're walking into a room, you need something from somebody, something big, not little, funding, a contract, a partnership of some sort, something that's like make or break, and you need them way more than they need you. So let's make it even more fun. Let's say you're sitting at their table, right, on their turf, and that's a tough spot to be in, right, for anybody. So that's exactly where Zelenskyy found himself when he visited the Oval Office recently. And let's just say it went down. It didn't go good. Okay. Reports called it fiery. Some people were calling it fiery. Some people were just smashing on Trump and Vance for their response to him and vice versa. But nonetheless, really, really tough scenario to find himself in, Zelenskyy in particular. More recently, just today, this came off just today actually, looks like Zelenskyy kind of turned a corner here. And so one of the problems here that we saw taking shape here was, he came off really demanding and less diplomatic than what many had expected that he was going to be. And some people think that that's okay. But as stated, if you were in those shoes on somebody else's home turf, how you present yourself, how you respond when you're needing help, it's definitely needs to be considered. And what we're seeing now that takes shape, and I'm going to show you some of the tweets two of the tweets that he just recently shared in relation to this again, because he's been in the public eye ever since then doing some damage control. And that's exactly what it is. You see, it's a clear attempt at damage control. And nothing wrong with that. He needs to at this point in time. And there's a lot that business leaders can learn about this from both sides of the missteps that are happening here and the cleanup process. So let's get into it. What went down? The backstory: Ukraine, as you may already be aware of, they needed U.S. aid. They still do. And we're talking about full-blown support. The U.S. holds all the leverage in this particular relationship here: the money, the weapons, the political weight and influence, global allies, etc. And Zelenskyy walks into the office needing help. Okay. But instead of approaching it with his hat in his hand, as they say, he came with the sword, and he came in hot, and he came in like the world owed him something. And from a human standpoint, I mean, you might be able to understand that, right? Like the guy must be under intense pressure. He's got a country that's been at war for years now. Tons of people are dying. Support is running out. Manpower is low. But from a negotiation standpoint, total disaster. And that's where this lesson starts that we're going to get into here. I want to talk about 5 business lessons from negotiating with no leverage and what we can learn from that. Lesson number 1: when you have no leverage, humility is your only currency. It really is. In business, you need someone's money, platform, influence, way more than they need you typically. And you better lead with humility in these types of scenarios here, because entitlement is one of the quickest ways to kill a deal, even worse than bad numbers. Okay. Number 2, cultural intelligence is non-negotiable. This is a big one because Zelenskyy definitely seemed to have maybe read the culture differently here, because different cultures read power signals differently. And in Eastern Europe, many people can attest to directness being seen as some form of strength. But in the U.S., especially in the political spaces, diplomacy, it matters more. And in business, when you're negotiating across cultures or even industries, you have to learn the language of power is how the best way I would put it. You have to learn how to speak their language as well. Number 3, stress does not excuse bad diplomacy. So as we mentioned, this guy must be under incredible pressure for what he's been going through over the last couple of years and leading this country. But stress makes people sloppy. And in diplomacy, that happens. In business, the same thing. And when the stakes are high, composure is your credibility. And if you crack under pressure, then people aren't going to handle you, or trust you, I should say, to handle the deal. And that's exactly what we saw here, I believe, is we saw a person under intense pressure begin to crack. And because of that, reason went out the window, cultural understanding went out the window, etc. And we just saw this thing turn into a dumpster fire real quick. Number 4, relationships are leverage. If you have no money, no bargaining power, no leverage, you better have relationships. You got to have relationships. They're the key to everything. People don't help strangers who show up demanding something from you or favors from you. They help people they like, people they trust, and people they respect. And in this case, like, trusting, and respect, that all went out the window in that exchange. Started off pretty good, but went south really fast. Number 5, and this was a sticking point across the board, that was going back and forth, right in the heat of that exchange, and you still see it happening today, was Zelensky's apology, if you want to call it that, or damage control, and that is gratitude is a power move, for sure. Okay, and here's the simple fix in the world: say thank you after a tough conversation. Say thank you, even if you don't get what you wanted. Say thank you. Show gratitude. It's a strategic reset, if you would, showing that you still value the relationship and you're keeping the door open because you don't want to burn that bridge completely. Okay. But now the damage control kicks in because things got heated really fast and things got amplified really quick. We're talking about support from the U.S. In the form of weapons getting pulled back. And so that's a major move and a major signal that, hey, things aren't going to go the way that he was hoping that they would go for. And so we got to consider now what the damage control is for Zelenskyy and his team, and what they did and what they must do now. So fast forward, Zelenskyy comes out today saying Ukraine is ready for peace, because remember that whole conversation ended with Trump kicking him out of the office and saying, hey, they can come back when they're ready for peace, but right now they're not ready for peace. They're not ready to make peace. And this week, Zelenskyy comes out saying, okay, now they're ready for peace talks, and he calls the meeting regrettable over at the Oval Office. And so that appears to be him, softening the edges to reopen the door for conversation. And it's classic business damage control. You blow the pitch, you burn the bridge that you didn't expect to. What else do you have to do? Well, you got to own that misstep without begging for forgiveness or groveling under the person's feet, and reframing the conversation toward shared goals between the two of you, and show the other side that you still value the relationship. And that's what I believe is happening right now. I want to give you a preview and show you the message that was sent out. As you can see here, Zelenskyy says, I would like to reiterate Ukraine's commitment to peace. None of us wants an endless war. Ukraine is ready to come to the negotiating table as soon as possible to bring lasting peace closer. Nobody wants peace more than the Ukrainians. My team and I stand ready to work under President Trump's strong leadership to get a peace that lasts. We are ready to work fast to end the war, and the first stages could be the release of prisoners and truce in the sky, ban on missiles, long-range drones, bombs on energy, and other civilian infrastructure, and truce in the sea immediately, if Russia will do the same. Then we want to move very fast through all next stages and to work with the U.S. to agree a strong final deal. We do really value how much America has done to help Ukraine maintain its sovereignty and independence, and we remember the moment when things changed, when President Trump provided Ukraine with javelins. He's using the same words that Trump was using with them too. We are grateful for this. Our meeting in Washington at the White House on Friday did not go the way it was supposed to be. It is regrettable that it happened this way. It is time to make things right. We would like future cooperation and communication to be constructive. Regarding the agreement on minerals and security, Ukraine is ready to sign it in any time and in any convenient format. We see this agreement as a step toward greater security and solid security guarantees, and I truly hope it will work effectively. Wow. Big. So let's kind of break this down a little bit here. I mean, some of these words, if you read into it, I don't want to assume anything, but very telling what some of this stuff is saying here. And I want to give you 4 steps to recover from a bad negotiation, and kind of pulling this from what we're seeing here. So if you ever mess up a deal, we've all been there. Here's 4 steps on how to recover it. Own it, but don't over-explain it. And I think Zelenskyy is actually doing a good job at this here, whoever's helping him craft this stuff. He's doing a good job in doing that. He's not rehashing the whole experience all over again. He's basically saying, hey, it was regrettable of what happened. Very short and to the point, direct, no long-winded excuses. He's saying, hey, let's figure out what we do from here. We messed up. Okay. Number 2, reframe the conversation forward. We see the shared goal concept, right, that they're talking about here. And he's moving right to that. He's saying, there was something that went wrong. He's not going and rehashing the whole thing all over again, but he's showing what's possible when you reset and collaborate. And number 3, public follow-up matters. Sometimes the post-negotiation message is just as important as the pitch itself. So what you say publicly is going to shape what's possible privately. And we've seen that happen right from the get-go. From the get-go, he thanked the American people. He was, I think, putting out a pollster to see what was going to happen there, jumped on another interview that they had. And then we see this follow-up days later that is a little bit different, but it's definitely telling that, hey, things didn't go the way that they were maybe hoping that they were going to end up. And so they had to start reframing the messaging a little bit, which is what this is about. And this is positioning to leave the door open, which is this 4th step to recovery from a bad negotiation. So even after a fiery exchange like what we've seen in the Oval Office here, a smart negotiator knows that you never want to burn the bridge that you plan on walking back over at some point in time. And he was quick to do that. So those are some helpful tips. Well, I hope they're helpful tips on how to negotiate when you got no leverage, and what we can learn from this particular situation when it comes to business dealings and whatnot. And so I hope you take this to heart, and I hope you just digest it a little bit, because I think there's some huge lessons, regardless of where you sit on the political spectrum of who is right and who is wrong. I think there's some huge lessons that we can take in from this about how to negotiate and how to correct and course correct yourself if you happen to slip up. Because, hey, we're people, we're humans, and sometimes emotions can't get the best of us. And you could be on that side of the spectrum in no time, and you got to figure out, okay, now what? What's the next steps? I just walked into this opportunity that I needed. I needed a deal to go through, or a relationship that was hopefully going to pan out, and it didn't for whatever reason. So what would you do differently? Maybe you got a story. I'd love to hear it. If you got a story to tell, drop it in the comments. We'd love to hear what it is that your story is, when maybe you had a blunder of yourself and you had to fix it. Okay. Maybe you pulled out one of these steps here of what's happening here. But nonetheless, thanks for tuning in. Make sure you hit that bell, subscribe, follow us here for more content, and we will catch you next time. Bye-bye.